welcome to the Cheer Up Podcast. I'm your host, Kara Hunt, and with me is the lovely Sherry Swalwell.
Hi,
How are you
today?
this morning?
I am doing great. It's a little overcast here. I know for some reason I seem to think I have to tell everybody the weather every single week. I don't know why. Maybe because that's like one way to start the day. But it's a little overcast, but summer has officially started. I think that it's we've had summer now for a couple of weeks since school's been out. And I am just it can be overcast all it wants to today. I am having fun with my friend. I've got great company. I've got great coffee. And I am so excited. June has been so much fun. I hope that all of our listeners are so excited because we've been talking about some fantastic books. But today we get to talk about your book, Kara. And I have been looking forward to this all week, to be honest with you. All week. Are you excited to talk about your book today too?
I am. I know that you okay, so you hear the hesitancy because this is something new to me. I'm so used to, I love interviewing other authors. I like talking with them about their books because I get so excited about their books. I read their books. I get so excited and I just want the world to know about it. But when it comes to me, I'm kind of like, it's different. It's like the shoe's now on the other foot, and I'm excited about the book and everything else. But this me talking about it is very, very new. So I'm excited to answer your question. Yes.
All you got to think about, Kara, is we're just sitting here talking about your friends. You're introducing them to me. Like I've already met them. I've had coffee with them. We've been over to your house a few times. But now you just get to tell me the nitty gritty about your friends. So really, all you're doing is telling me about your friends. You're not talking about your book. You're talking about your friends.
Okay, I can do that. See, that takes a little bit of the nervousness off of it. So, okay, sure, go ahead.
Good.
Speaking about my friends.
All we're doing is talking about your friends. But I have to give a little bit of a background introduction to our listeners because you and I met through a writing group, and we were in like this group together. Well, we were in like this subgroup together where we got to critique each other's works in progress. And yes. I met you through a completely different book. And remind me of the name of that book because I want to see if I remembered it right or not.
Unharmed.
Yay, I was right. Yes. So we met through Unharmed, and it was more of a supernatural type book. It talks a lot about good and evil. It talks about the spiritual world. And when I read just those few chapters, I literally felt like God was tapping me on the shoulder and saying, Sherry, this is somebody that is going to be in your life for a very long time. This is not just reading her stuff, telling her what you like or don't like, how she should improve or not improve, which at that point I didn't even know. I was so new myself. But this is going to be a lifelong connection. And God is so amazing. We have had that lifelong connection ever since. And what I absolutely love, and I'm going to tell your listeners this because I hope that they will be as excited about this as I am. As they read Paper Dolls, you put a little bit of Unharmed in there. You give us a teaser. And I love it. I absolutely love it. But I'm going to come back to that in a little bit because that's not the first question I want to ask you. So the first question I want to ask you is, your story, Paper Dolls, takes place in the town of Habakkuk or Habakkuk, however you want to pronounce it. And I want you to explain to our listeners why you chose. Well, first off, tell them a little bit about the book of Habakkuk in the Bible, and then explain why you made that the setting of your book, because the way you explain it is so beautiful.
Well, the name of the series actually is the Habakkuk book series. And I say Habakkuk, and like you say, I know a lot of people say Habakkuk or, and everything else. So forgive me, everyone, if you say it a little bit differently, but it's a 7-book series is what's currently going to be writing, and it is called the Habakkuk book series. Paper Dolls is book 1 in that series. It is currently out. You can purchase it on Amazon, and it's available in hardcover, paperback, and or digital download. So you can get it in whichever format you prefer, but it is currently available. Book 2 in the Habakkuk series will be available later on this year in 2022. Book 3 will be available in 2023. However, now what I want to say about that is the Habakkuk series is based on the whole book of Habakkuk. Habakkuk was a prophet in the Old Testament in a book, but it's basically the town Habakkuk in the series, Habakkuk series, because all of the characters live in this town of Habakkuk, Missouri, is based on the book of Habakkuk and Habakkuk, but the founding verse in Habakkuk for the Habakkuk series is Habakkuk 3:19. Where it talks about my Lord, the Lord is my strength. He is my personal bravery. He is my invincible army. And he gives us hinds feet to go over the precarious places or something like that. And so that's the Kara translation of it, but I think my favorite translation of it is the AMPC translation of it, where it talks about that. He is my strength. He is my personal bravery. He is my invincible army. I absolutely love that. And the part about how he gives us hinds feet. And hinds feet is, or make our feet, more like hinds feet to go over the precarious places in our lives. And when it was pointed out that the hinds feet that Habakkuk was referring to, like in the book of the Bible, is where he was talking about using something similar to a mountain goat. And they have a particular type of feet that helps them get up very gravelly, rocky, bouldery, steep, pointy type mountains, which would be very precarious for like regular humans or other animals to get to. But because they have these certain type of feet, they are able to get up to it and climb over all of that, and just climb on top, rock after rock, boulder after boulder, and then, get on top, and stand there. And so in Habakkuk 3:19, and when it's talking about the hinds feet or whatnot, it just reminds me of how no matter what life throws in our path, no matter what happens in our path, that all the rockiness, all the graveliness, all the boulders, all the mountains, and it look like, Lord, I'm never going to get to the top of this. I'm never going to see the other side of this. I'm never going to, where my issues, problems, life, things are going to be below me, and I'm going to be on top. And when the scripture talks about that, and how he's our strength to be able to do that, to climb that mountain, and how he is our personal bravery, he gives us that supernatural strength and guidance to be able to go through it, even when we're quivering, on the inside as we're slowly climbing the slopes, and how he's our invincible army. So, like, no matter what comes around us trying to knock us off, or we're trying to climb up to the top of that mountain, he's got an invincible, army, which means they can't be defeated, right? So if God's on your side, it reminds me of the scripture of, if God is for you, who can dare be against you? And, you get on top of that rock or that mountain or that obstacle or that problem or that issue, and you're like, wow, God is so good. He helped me all through that. And that is what the Habakkuk series is about. It's about 5 different women, or dolls, as I like to call them, and that's why the first book is called Paper Dolls. And it's about 5 different women or dolls, and it talks about the different things that they've had to go through in life, or that they're currently going through in life. One of them is dealing with the sudden death of her husband, so she's dealing with grief. Another one is a former escort, and she's dealing with worth and how is she worthy, and why does this particular person in her life all of a sudden sees her that way when everyone else kind of looks down at her with disdain. And then another one is dealing with the terminal illness diagnosis. And that's definitely one of those mountains where you need God's strength. You need his bravery. You need his invincible army to fight for you so that you can get to the other side, because you don't know when you get to the top of that mountain, like, what is it going to look like, right? And then, you have someone who's having difficulty in her marriage, a marriage that was based on deception. And she had all the hopes and dreams for this marriage, and that everything that she was promised would come true. And it's actually been a nightmare, instead. And just walking through those rocky situations of dealing with a marriage and what to do about it as a believer. And then you have someone who was kidnapped at a young age, and she returns 40 years later to her home, and that rockiness and everything else of all the accusations that come from that. Like, did her parents know about it? Did they have a partner kidnapping? Did they come look for her? If they did, why did they? If they didn't, why didn't they? And all of those questions that she's had that were unanswered, over the years. And there are a lot of baby dolls in there too, so, and I call them baby dolls because they're not the main characters, but they still have, like, a significant story thread, not a storyline, but a story thread that kind of weaves through the main doll's storylines. And so I think that was a long answer to your question, but I hope I answered it.
No, that's perfect. And so there's a few things that I want to say about that. One is I absolutely, absolutely, absolutely love that you took your first book to interweave all 5 of the women. And actually there's a 6th one there too, who is a baby doll, as you call her, but she's a pretty large baby doll because she is intertwined in all of the people's lives, not just 1 or 2 of them. And that would be Kite's sister. But yeah, and she's also become a favorite of a lot of your readers. But yes. I love how you started your series with this book. Some people might not like all of the changing points of view. I happen to love it. I think that starting a book that way so that we get a taste, a real in-depth taste, not just like an outsider's perspective of the taste, but their thoughts and their feelings and their hopes and their dreams and the things that they're struggling with from their perspective. I love it. You nailed it. You couldn't have done it any better. So by having this be the beginning in your book 1, it has drawn me into and had me connect on such a deeper level with each of the women than I would have if you had done like the traditional route where book 1 is about the grieving widow. Book 2 is about the former, what do you call them? The former
escort, prostitute. Yes.
Book 3 is about the lady with the terminal illness. Book 4, no, you hit us with all 5 of them at the beginning in such a great way. And like I said, all from their own perspective. And another thing that you have just nailed, and that is each one of these women have their own personalities. They are not cookie cutter women. They have their own mannerisms, their own quirks, their own way that they talk. It is wonderful. I truly, like I said, I feel like I've had tea with all of them already. I feel like we've had a coffee date or more than one coffee date. So I feel like I know them. I don't feel like you have to tell me about them because you did such a great job in the book by introducing them and making me as the reader want more. I absolutely love it. So, which of the characters that you wrote would you say is your favorite, if you have a favorite, and why?
That's dicey. It's like, I don't know. Okay. I am going to be, what's the word I'm looking for here? Author correct, not politically correct, but authorly correct. and just say they're all my favorites, right? I don't want people to think that I dislike any other characters or anything like that. Now, there are some I love writing and getting deeper into their point of view than others, obviously, because, especially the 5 main ones. And some, where I'm like, you know what? I just want to smack her and go, wake up, something like that. So, but I don't want to make any of my readers upset who already read the book and they be like, "What? How can she not be your favorite?" So I am just going to be AC right here, arthritically correct or whatever they call it.
That works.
And so they all get a trophy. Everyone's fine. I love them all.
Well, as your friend and fellow podcaster, that probably was not a very nice question for you to ask. So instead, I'll backtrack a little bit and I'll talk about some of the other things that I absolutely love. So one of the things that I really want to make sure that we highlight so that people understand it, and maybe it will give them a little more appetite, a little more excitement. Appetite's probably not the right word in this instance, but excitement to read the book. I love how so first off, I'm going to interrupt my own self here. This book is by far, most definitely a clean Christian fiction book with tons of romance that points you back to the Bible. It is biblically sound. It is biblically, it is a book that I would not hesitate to share with my daughter. And my daughter's only 19. And while there are parts in here that a married person can appreciate a little bit more because of their being married themes, it is a book that is a wonderful, wonderful starting point of discussion for healthy marriages, healthy relationships. There's a lot of dysfunction in there too, which is what makes a great Christian fiction book. And you have to have that conflict, and you have to have, otherwise it's boring. But you write in such a way that you bring the sexual element of a marriage relationship. You define it and you describe it in such a way that is absolutely beautiful. It's like a canvas painting. People who have experienced it will totally get what you're saying. And people who are not married or have not gone there yet in their life will still stay chaste and innocent. You just have a really, really wonderful way about you that it's a beautiful work of art. So in having started to read Kite Story, book 2, you continue it. That's why I say you have this gift, because you know how to describe a loving marriage relationship in such a beautiful way that it still stays clean, it still stays appropriate, it still stays rated G, but it stays true and realistic to the story. It's beautiful. And I love, so that was one part that I wanted to talk about. The other thing I wanted to say was I absolutely love how each woman's story has so many sub-layers to that as well. And isn't that the way life is? Like, you can't just deal with a terminal illness and that's the only thing you can focus on, because life doesn't work that way. Life doesn't stop when you're given a diagnosis and say, okay, you can focus only on this diagnosis. Everything else in your life is either put on hold or is peachy keen. So Lydia, who's dealing with the terminal illness, she also is dealing with relational issues with her family, with different family members. So she's got the added stress of not just fighting for her life, but she's fighting for reconciliation. And then you've got Eve, who has marriage problems, but that also then ties into and rolls over into family relational problems, because everybody's trying to defend her and stick up for her with her marriage problems. But then that causes conflict in other areas of her life or other relationships in her life. So I love how you keep the layers going in a very natural way, and in a way that that just speaks to the realities of life. Like, which one of all of the 5 that you wrote was probably the most fun to write?
I would say, well, all of them were, well, no, not all of them were fun to write. I think, well, no, not that one, but because I'm just kind of going through them here. I think, honestly, to believe it or not, Priscilla's was the most fun to write. She was a former, um, um, well, some people would say prostitute, some people say hooker, but she never really did that type of stuff. She was more of like a professional escort in her past, and she was proud of it, and she had her own personal reasons for doing it and taking part in that. She's kind of like one of the bad girl type of dolls, in the book of Paper Dolls, and everything. And when her story begins, she's not a Christian, right? And so she's kind of proud of what she did and why she did it. However, she's also a minister's daughter, and she knew better, and she know that the way she was living was, incorrect, but she decided to, you know, be rebellious and do that type of thing. Anyway, so I say hers was the most fun to write, in the, right, because it got to, I got to delve into that bad girl side persona, a little bit more, right, than the other one. So, Kite is already a Christian, like in her character. So is Lydia. She's a mighty prayer warrior. Eve as well, very strong in her faith, and Mary. So all of them are Christians when their story starts out, but not so with Priscilla. And she had a lot of things that she needed to work out mentally before she could even get to that spot. So if I would say which one was a little bit more fun to write, a little bit, it would definitely be her. She's a bad girl of the Paper Dolls book, or anything else. So hers, I think, was a little bit more fun to write.
So in the writer circle, in the writer world, people understand what I mean by when I say, are you a pantser or are you a plotter? But in the listener world, I'm not sure if you guys completely understand those definitions, or I'm going to define those words for you so you know what I'm asking Kara. A pantser is somebody who writes by the seat of their pants. They just kind of sit down, they open up a clean Word document, and they just start writing. And it just comes to them as they're writing. And then a plotter is somebody who makes an outline, sometimes a very detailed outline, sometimes a sketchy outline, and then they stick right to it because they've plotted it all out. They know what the story is going to look like, and they don't sit down to their computer to start writing the first word until they have everything from the beginning to the end finished. And then there's people who are in between. So, Kara, what are you? Are you a pantser or are you a plotter?
I am definitely what they call a SOTP, a seat of the pants writer. I am definitely a pantser regarding the books that I have written. And I say that to say I don't just sit down and say, oh, I'm going to start writing this particular story. Usually by the time I sit down to write it and say chapter 1, the idea, the storyline has been simmering in my brain or my mind for a long time. Okay, so it's not like I plotted it out, but the basic storyline, some of the characters, and what the novel is going to be about, I have probably been, I don't want to use the word meditating, but have been noodling for quite a while. Maybe a year, 2 years, 3 years, and so I've had, it just kind of like, okay, something like that. And it will, it'll come and go, come and go, and come and go. And then finally, I get to the point to like, okay, like I can't noodle anymore because my brain is going to explode. I need to get this down, on paper, and write it, out. And so yes, so I don't do like the typical plotter who they will have everything, including storyboards all around their office, and like 50 pages of the plot line all plotted out from chapter to chapter to chapter to chapter. And they will do all of that. And right before, they even type out one word. And so that I definitely don't do. I don't do storyboarding. And I don't have a plot line plotted out before I write. So I'm very much a seat of the pants writer. I kind of just, like I said, it's been noodling in my head for a little bit. And then by the time I sit down and write it, I at least have the first half thought out, not plotted out, because I sit down and I get to a point and I'm like, okay, well, what now? Miss Big Brain. What else we have? you know. And then that's when the characters start to talk to me, and they're like, okay, well, this is what's going to happen, and then we're going to do this, and this is going to happen, and then the story begins to flow. It gets a rhythm, and it really starts to flow, you know. And everything, and then it just starts to take on a life of its own. The characters kind of tell me more about their town, more about their personalities, more about what they're exactly, going to do in the situations and how they really feel. And so it's like once I get the initial thoughts and stuff down on paper, they kind of put the flesh on the bone, so to speak.
Well, it works for you really, really well. So are you already, like, does your brain work in such a way that you've got all 7 of these books figured out and you're ready and already thinking about a new series or 2 new series, or are you focused 100% right now on Habakkuk?
Okay, so if I would let my brain do what it wants to do, I will probably be thinking about 5, 6, 7 series down the road. But I have learned that I can't do that because I have a tendency to go way off on rabbit trails, right? And so I'm like, I can't do that. I can't focus on that right now. So I've tried to self-discipline myself to where I stay focused on just what I'm writing right now, maybe one book ahead. So like if when I was writing Paper Dolls, I kind of knew that all of their stories, of the 5 major dolls, all of the 5 paper dolls that we talk about in the book Paper Dolls, I knew that that those 5 ladies, that their stories were going to continue. And so as I was writing that of course was in the back of my mind. So I knew, I had a general idea of like book 2, Kite's story was going to be about, and book 3, like what Priscilla's story is going to be about. So I kind of had a general idea because it kind of picks up where it leaves off in Paper Dolls. And I don't want you to think that I leave you guys hanging at the end of the book. So I don't do that because I know a lot of series do that. And then, you're like, oh, now I got to pick up the next one to see what happened. Paper Dolls does have an official ending with it, but it kind of picks up at their life maybe about a year afterwards is where the next following books pick up. So the way that it ends initially, and then you're like, wow, I'd really like to know what happened. How did that turn out? How did the relationship turn out? Was it for the best, or did something else happen? Did things work out? Did things not work out? So, and this, the following books in the series pick up about a year later after after Paper Doll ends. So it's like a continuing of their journey, their Christian journeys, and their life stories. And also, even though some of the heavier topics are discussed, like we were talking about grief and someone's past and diagnosing illness, having a terminal illness diagnosis and whatnot. I don't want everyone to think that the book is just very heavy on those type of things. Because one thing I like to do is to also weave through some lightheartedness moments and things like that in there as well. So it's not a very heavy book or something like that, where most of the topics are just heavy, or things like that. So there's a lot of lightheartedness driven out through as well. At least I hope it is. Sherry, what do you think?
Oh, I completely agree. It's a book that, I love women's fiction. I love books that make me cry. And I have to say, your book didn't make me cry. It made me laugh. It made me think. It made me turn inward and be introspective. It was wonderful. It hit all of the marks and then some. So yeah, no, I agree with you. It's not heavy, but it's realistic and it's real life. And real life isn't even when real life is heavy, it's not heavy all the time. I mean,
absolutely,
you can be at
right.
a funeral and you can be laughing and you can be feeling guilty for laughing at a funeral, but life goes on. I mean, just because you're laughing doesn't mean that you're being disrespectful to the person who died. Sometimes it's a tribute to the person's life and how well lived it was. The person that died, the person that you're respecting and honoring that day. So,
or how much they made you laugh.
Exactly.
Your memories of them, right?
Them. Yeah, exactly. So So Paper Dolls is number 1. Then you've got the 5 women. So that makes 6 books. So what's the 7th book going to be?
Hey, I'm so glad you asked that because that ties around to the first book that you and I, that you were mentioning at the beginning of the podcast, and you were talking about the initial book, Unharmed. And that was the one, and yeah, so that one was, we're talking many years ago, because it was just a work in progress at that time. And that is the one that, when we were part of that group, that you had chosen to, help me work on, and everything else. That manuscript actually ended up going on to semifinal twice in the American Christian Fiction Writers Genesis category. It semifinal twice, I think, and finaled once. So I ended up being a finalist, like in their the ACFW Genesis contest, which is not just nationally, it's globally, I believe. So, and it, was a finalist there and everything else. So that book, and in Paper Dolls, there's another baby doll mentioned. Her name is Jan. And of course, you who read Unharmed recognized her,
Mm-hmm.
and everything else. And so you recognized her. And she just makes a small little cameo appearance there, and everything else. And so she actually is going to be the final 7th book in the series. And that's going to be Unharmed. It's going to be renewed, updated a little bit. And that one definitely has to do more, like you said, with spiritual warfare, because Jan has a very, very difficult background. And that is why the name of it is called Unharmed. And she has a very difficult background and everything else. So you'll see just tidbits of her story throughout the other 6. And then the final one will be Unharmed, and it will be Jan's story. So the first book is Paper Dolls. It introduces all 5 of the dolls and some of the baby dolls. And then in book 2, we'll be picking up with Kite's story. Book 3, Priscilla's story. Book 4, Lydia's story. Book 5, Eve's story. Book 6 will be Mary's story, actually. And then book 7 will be Jan's story. She'll be the only baby doll in the Habakkuk series at this time that would kind of like have her own little book, her own little story. But her story in little tidbits will be will be woven kind of throughout the rest of the series. So it's not like by the time you get to her, you're going to be like, okay, well, what's up with this lady? What is her background and what's going on and everything. So anyway, and I'm just hoping everyone loves and enjoys the Habakkuk series, and I am just having a blast just writing all the books for it. So it's fun. It's interesting. I love writing. It's just one of those things that I don't know how, but it's just one of those things that God has just kind of always put on my heart to do, especially fiction writing, more than like non-fiction writing, especially in my case. And as I've mentioned before, I think I wrote my first quote unquote book like when I was 12, and I say quote unquote because it was like on pen and paper, spiral notebook, and I don't even know if I finished it, but I do remember sitting down like, hey, I'm going to write a book, at 12. And I know a lot of people are like, some people love fiction. Some people are like, oh, Kara, I like nonfiction better. And I'm like, one thing I love about fiction and the stories that, God gives me is that I just hope that people just not only get invested in the characters, but also into the storylines that reflect and introspect, like you said, about their own life, their own Christian journey, and that God just uses it as wings, to go into his healing arms and for him to continue to teach them more about whatever topic, situation, issue, or anything that they're dealing with. And storylines is a great way to do that, and everything else, because even though the characters may be fictional, even though the town may be fictional, the things that they deal with are not. They're very realistic. Very realistic. So, yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Oh, I
you know me, I'm a queen of going off on rabbit trails.
Well, you have no idea how excited I am that you're going to make Jan your 7th book. So everybody, seriously, when you read Paper Dolls, Pay attention to Jan. Pay attention to the details surrounding Jan, and then pay attention to her through the whole rest of the series, because, oh my goodness, you are going to love her story. That's the very first book that I ever read from Kara. And literally, I want to say it was like in 2013. So we're going on almost 10 years. And I still remember the characters' names. I still remember the details of the book. I still remember so much. Oh, and there is a woman from the church. She's a grandmotherly type woman. Oh my gosh, she is hilarious. So that will
I know who. Yeah,
7. That will be in book 7, and she is hilarious. Oh my, she will stick with you too. So this is from 9 years ago. I haven't read the manuscript in over 9 years, and I still remember the details. So that is how much Kara's books are going to stick with you, because they are seriously that good. So I hate to do it, but we're back at the end of our time together today. It just goes by so fast. So if you need encouragement, if you need prayer, if you want to share a blessing or a praise that God has been doing in your life, go over to cheeruppodcast@gmail.com and send us an email. We love answering emails. We love praying with people. We love just doing life with you. If you want to continue to build and join into our community, go over to Facebook and join the Cheer Up Podcast Facebook group. And you won't just get to talk to us, but you'll get to talk to everybody else who's in the group as well, which is just as much fun. Head over to Kara's website, KaraRHunt.com, and check out all of the exciting things that she has going on there. I think pretty soon she'll be having the cover reveal for Unbound on there. So be watching for that for Kite Story. Please go pick up your own copy of Paper Dolls. You will be so glad that you did. Either ebook or paperback, it doesn't matter which kind, but summer's the perfect time to read. And I'm telling you, if you love anything to do with Christian fiction, Christian women's fiction, suspense, anything like that, you are going to absolutely love her series. It is so good. And I am so happy that we've been doing the podcast for a little over a year, and I finally get to share with you guys Kara's wonderful writing, because, like I said, I've known about it and read her stuff for 10 years, and I'm so glad that she's finally able to share it with the world. Head over to my website if you want to, SherrySwalwell.com, CherySwalwell.com. I have some exciting things over there. Look for the tab Jesus in the Everyday. You can learn more about that. You can learn about the other exciting things I'm going to be doing, and I am doing. I have a new nonfiction book that's coming out, if it isn't already out now. So head over and look at my nonfiction tab. And I am busy writing, or I just got started writing again, book 6 for my series. So if you come back next week, we are going to talk about book 5 that I've written for the Redemption of the Green Pine series, Path to Grace. But I have just had so much fun today, Kara. I cannot tell you how much I enjoy the behind the scenes glimpses that you've given us into the town of Habakkuk, into the series of Habakkuk, into how you came about that from the Bible. I just thank you so much. It is so much fun to get to interview you and just kind of hear a little bit more about your heart. And I cannot wait till we can do this again for Unbound and Priscilla's story, Lydia's story, Eve's story, Mary's story, and Jan's story. So keep writing, write fast, and we will talk about Unbound in the very near future. So until then, have a great rest of your week. Enjoy your summer. I hope it's nice and warm for you. I hope that you're able to take a breather and just spend a little bit more time with God. And remember, John 16:33 tells us that in this world we will have trouble, tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. Jesus' words just bring so much comfort. Hold those tight. See you next week, and enjoy the rest of your week this week. Bye-bye.